Okay, I want to show you the pieces of this kit and point out a couple of things about them. You have these two pieces here that are kind of rounded on the edge. These are your top of your bench. They're going to be pre-drilled with holes that I've already started the screws into a couple of these so you can see how that is. These are the legs, and this has got a special hole drilled in it, which we're going to talk about later on. One of the key things to understand is that there are angles on all of these cuts that are very important. For example, the edge of this bottom here, in order for it to lay flat when we put the stool together, the angle has to be the right way. And we'll see this as we get along in the construction of it. And you'll notice as we go through, I'll be pointing out the angles on all of these pieces. These two pieces are called the connecting rails, and they connect to the top of the stool. And this is a piece that's going to be used for a support. And these little pieces, which are called tenons, will fit into this hole here, which is called a mortise. And we'll talk about that more as we go along. Okay, this is a jig that is going to help us to line up everything for the top to be able to get these top pieces to set properly onto the connecting rails. Now, these connecting rails are actually cut at an angle, as I mentioned before, all along this side and down here. If you lay them down right against the jig, they'll just lay firmly with no gap in there. If you get them turned around, you see how you'll have that big hole in there, and it won't lay flat. So you know you've got it right when it's leaning up flat against the jig. Once you've got those rails in place, I'm going to put a little bead of glue along here. Notice I'm not really putting too much glue there. It's going to help to make this nice and secure. Then I'll take my top pieces and I will lay them down on these connecting rails, making sure that that little mark is right in the center, right where that line is on the jig. The front one will also go right there with that little mark, which is the actual center point of that board. It should line up with that mark on the jig. Then I know that my screws are going to go straight down into the connecting rails and I'll have a good joint. Okay, so now it's time to drill these screws down into the connector rails. And I recommend that if you're the adult working with the child, that you start them out, the first screw in there. Make sure that it's snug up against the jig and it's lined up in the front. These holes are countersunk so that the screw head will not stick up above the top of the top piece. So now you can have the child you're working with put the screw in there and screw the second one down in. You might have to help them if they can't get it snugly down all the way. Now once you've got all the screws in the holes, you're going to look at it underneath and see if it's snug along here. And see I have a little bit of a gap right there, so that means I didn't get that screw down all the way. So put that back down on the jig and just give it a little bit more with my screwdriver. Now you can see that it's nice and snug. Okay, so now we're going to work on the leg assembly, and for that we're going to have these two legs and we're going to have this support piece that goes across the middle. This is where the angles are really important. You'll notice that when you stand up this leg, it should slope in just a little bit, and the other one will slope in just at the opposite angle. And you'll see that this middle piece is also cut at an angle here and an angle here. So it's important that when we put this tenon into the mortise, which is this hole right here, it's going to actually pull it together at the right angle. You'll see what I mean. And you see here on the end, you've got this little groove in the end of the tenon, and there's a wedge that goes into that groove. Once we get ready to finish this up, we're going to hammer that wedge in there and it'll spread this out, fit very tightly into that hole, and this stool will really be solid. I'm going to put the wedges over here for a minute, and I'm going to put a little bit of glue in this hole, okay, just on the outside of the hole, a little bit on that side, A little bit on that side. Doesn't take much of this glue. I'm going to take my tenon. I'm going to put it into the mortise like that. Okay. You'll see a little bit of glue there on the outside. It might stick out a little bit, but we're going to sand that off at the end. Okay. Then we'll do the same thing on this other end. A little bit of glue down each side. Once again, the key word is just a little bit. You don't need a lot of glue. When we bring this up, and we put it into that hole, and see, that's how the stool will be made secure. Okay, now we're ready to put the top assembly on top of the bottom assembly. We have some pre-drilled holes along the edge here of the legs, so I've already started a couple of screws in there. It's going to take my top, set it down to the inside of these legs, and push them over snug. And I want to be sure that my the front end of the leg is flush with the front end of this connecting rail right here. Then I take a cordless screwdriver and screw that in. Get that nice and snug and make sure that that's tight right there. And once you've put the first one in, you can have your child that you're working with run in the next one. Do the same thing over here. And so on until we have it finished. Okay, so now our footstool is pretty much fully assembled. The last thing we have to do is to take these wedges and put them into that little slot right there. Take your hammer and tap that in as far as you can get it to go. As you do so, it spreads that out and makes it nice and tight in that joint there. And we're going to just turn this over and use some kind of a saw to just cut that off. And after we've cut that off, it's sanded down nice and flush, and our stool will be complete. Hi, I'm Builder Bob, and this is the project we're going to work on tonight. We're going to make this little handy footstool. This is a project to be worked on between an adult and a child. It could either be mom or dad, aunt or uncle, grandma, grandpa. Doing it together is a lot of fun, and it's kind of a bonding experience. We'll put together the footstool, and I will show you all the steps to do that. And at the end, then we'll put on a primer coat of paint, and if there's time, we'll put a second coat, and maybe you can even decorate it too. You'll have something that you can take home and give to somebody you love, maybe mom, and she'll really be proud of you.